thank you all again for joining us. Tonight's presentation is called Sharing Your Research Results. Tonight's guest speaker is Seema Jane Kenney. Today's technologies give us many ways to share our genealogy results. We're going to learn creative ways to share your discoveries that might interest your living family members. Seema is a professional genealogist and has an experienced software instructor. Based on over 20 years of research, her known roots are deep in New England, as well as England, Germany, and Sweden, with recent DNA now adding a line from the Netherlands. She has a certificate in genealogical research from Boston University. She completed ProGen and is an active member of several societies and part of the NERGC Planning Committee. So all 25 of us roughly here live on Zoom, and I'm sure for the hundreds that will watch after the fact on YouTube, let's give Seema a big virtual round of applause. And Seema, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's nice to be back. Good to see that people are still interested in this topic and not all born out yet. So today is to talk a little bit about the what, why, how, when, and technology that we can use to share some of our research results, because otherwise, it ends up in a box and somebody says, oh, that's mom or dad's old papers, and, they pay no attention, and there goes all your hard work. So I do want to talk towards the end about the technology and the different options we have that, boy, do I wish my grandparents had had, or my great-grandparents that I used to know when I was a little girl, because I would love to hear their voices again. And I'm working on it, but it's not easy. So we're going to start out tonight with what to share. There's one easy answer, right? We share everything. Maybe not quite, but the easiest thing, of course, to share is when you find that really nice document. So this is a document that my cousin had for part of my father's maternal line. It's absolutely gorgeous. Part of it, well, some of the inks are in color if you get to see the original, which I don't even have. I have a photocopy of the original. Now, one of the things on here is, this is obviously came out of something that might have been considered a family Bible, or was just a paper that somebody made up. I'm not quite sure. Look at the gorgeous handwriting at the left. I almost wonder if this wasn't pre-printed with some of this information, because that handwriting is just too perfect, right? Every single Anderson looks exactly the same as the one above it. But what I do want to make sure I look at with a document like this is I'm looking for, how do I know that it was accurate? How do I know that it was kept up to date? And the biggest things I have to tell me that is that the marriages and the deaths show a wide variety of handwriting. So that's a good clue that they were written concurrent when the event took place. The part that looks kind of pre-printed, that could be a transcription. It could literally be something that was printed at a printer on behalf of the family or something. But I feel comfortable that the marriages and deaths anyway were probably done as things went along. Except for a couple of those deaths I just noticed look like they might be pre-printed as well. Some of those children that died early. God bless the mother for having 11 children and surviving all of this. Another thing that's fun to share is if you find somebody's letters or diaries. I've done both now. I've found a pocket diary for my husband's grandfather. He used it in World War I. It was a very small thing. It fit in their shirt pocket, but it had enough room on each page for 3 days. So the two facing pages would cover 6 days. And they were meant to, write things in it. It also had tons of pages in there about what to do when you find yourself alone and you have to survive in the wilderness or whatever. His grandfather didn't write in it every day, but he did write in it for the days he was away from the US. And that might have been the most interesting part, who knows? There wasn't a lot of room. He wrote about the weather. He wrote about whether or not the food was any good. Um, but I didn't really care what he had written about. The thing I did very first when we found it was got each of my three boys and I said, I want you to hold this pencil because this is a pencil that your great grandfather used to write with almost 100 years ago. It was still stuck into the little diary book. I did read it. I transcribed the whole thing. I shared it with the 11 grandchildren that are in my children's generation. Um, and I learned a little bit about this man that I had not heard about, somebody that my husband had never even met. There's a great love story in there about how much he misses my husband's grandmother. I learned that he liked to draw. Um, and I picked up a few questions about World War One. One of the things that he quoted a lot while he was in England and France was he would write in there and say, the Red Cross gave us a good meal. I thought the Red Cross was a United States thing. I never would have thought of them being in Europe feeding our troops. So it's just another little tidbit to look into and ask questions about. Of course, probably the biggest thing and the most exciting thing we have that we want to share are photographs. So I have these three photographs. This part of my father's family is very well documented because they all still live together up in Maine. But these three photographs represent four generations of my father's family. So he's the little baby in the left-hand picture there. So my grandmother is in here twice. My great-grandmother is in these pictures twice. And then I have my great-great-grandparents. So when I show these to my kids, I can say, wow, it's even more generation. Well, same generations, but I get to put more greats in the list. But sharing these and just showing the pictures is one thing. Hopefully, if I'm going to share the picture, I'm going to write on it or display with it the names of the people. If I went to all the trouble to figure out who all these people are, I should share that. But I also want to share, when I share photographs and things, I want to share more of that. I want to share my memories. I want to share the stories, the emotions that are stirred by those pictures, the social history that goes with it. I want to give people a sense of my personality. It's great that we share all the facts, but I also want to know, how did that impact you? Robert and I were just talking about when are we going to have election results, and like just writing something in a month or so about the anxiety of what it meant to wait for the election results could be very telling to someone, even 20 years from now. So it's important to share not just the facts, but also the emotions and the social history of what we're living through. So why do we want to share all of this? And who do we want to share it with? Well, we want to share it mostly because if we do it orally, just telling stories, like we've seen and done in movies and whatever, it only lasts about 3 generations. And it gets a little distorted. Remember playing those telephone games where you told your neighbor something and they passed it on, and when it got to the other end of the line, the story was entirely different. We'd like to have the family history stay the same. We want to keep the same stories going from generation to generation. Knowing your heritage does increase your self-confidence, which in turn reduces stress. It does help you to realize that your ancestors have gone through struggles, and if they went through some of the struggles they went through, we can certainly manage to get through what we're going through. And just think how great it would be to have audio or video or a diary from your great-grandparent. So leaving a legacy is one of the best ways to ensure that your descendants will understand a lot more about your life than just the facts they get out of available documents. So how do we go about sharing these things? This is actually a frame that's in my house, both sides of our family, mostly wedding pictures. So obviously we can do collage frames of family photos. I have a whole wall full of them on my staircase, like so many other people do. Um, I did one for a client where I not only included the pictures, but I had signatures of the ancestors from various documents. So I took the signatures and I put those with the photographs, just to kind of bring it a little bit more alive. You get a little more feel for who the person was and what they what their handwriting looked like. Um, Another option, of course, is to write a book. I think I've written 6 now, maybe 7. I've lost track, um, on my family or my husband's family. The one you see here, the kind of orangish, peachish colored one, is the first book I did about 7 years ago. That's on my father's maternal side. Um, and then I did one, the black one is my mother-in-law's handwritten recipes. Um, these are self-published. Doing the recipe book got me more information because I found out that you have a page limit of 600 pages, and I was at like 602, so I had to do a little editing here to make it fit. Um, but self-publishing these days makes this so much easier and so much more affordable than what our grandparents or parents would have been able to do in their day. Um, there's templates you can download for how to format all the pages. You type into the template all your information, you upload your file back to the company. Most of them have online options for designing a cover. So, you put in the picture, you set up the words, but they have the colors and all of that for you. And once they send you a proof, you look it over, make sure you didn't make any silly mistakes like I did the first time. Um, the first time I did a proof, the page numbers were inside by the binding instead of out at the edge of the page, little things that, you just have to fix. And then you order your printed copies. So I told you that the handwritten recipes was almost 600 pages. I ordered 20 copies of that. They were delivered to my house, 20 copies of a 600-page book, and it cost me just under $250. So very reasonable. The cover is much nicer than anything I would get at just going to the office store. And I needed 20 copies for all the grandchildren and the children, so they'd each have one. So much nicer than the copy store and much less expensive. And as the author, you do get discounts, and you also can earn royalties. The book on my paternal grandmother's family, I have actually earned over $200 in royalties because the family is so large. People keep buying copies of the book, and every time somebody buys a copy, I get like $20 or $25 out of it. So, genealogy does pay in some ways. Other things we can do to share information is we can make maps. This is a map of the 6 or 7 places, wait, 5, I think it's 7 or 8 places that my great-grandfather lived in Boston. I have a feeling that his work was somewhere in between those two. He used to work on what is now part of the Green Line of the T back when it was just getting electrified. But again, it's just a visual way to kind of say to people, well, let's go check these different places out. We can see where certain things happened. I spent some time one Christmas, I made what's now considered a digital scrapbook. I gave these to each of my 3 children at Christmas with just 2 pages, couple pictures, couple facts about various vacations that we had taken. So these, because they're done on the computer and you can print multiple copies, they're scrapbooks in every sense of the word. They're just done digitally now. So this is something, again, you can find on many websites, easy enough to get involved with. And I actually got a good reaction. They were all pretty happy to have a few little tidbits about our family vacations and things. So other ways that I've done a few things to share some of this. You might, if you've got a photograph project, and don't we all have some pile of photographs somewhere that needs some work done to it. See about getting some of the younger members of the family involved. Maybe they can help you sort them. Maybe you can tell them a story first and then see if they can find photographs that help go with that story. Even the youngest ones can help you to say, I need to sort these. And the first thing is to say the ones that have writing on them can go in one pile and the ones with no writing go in a different pile. As much as you might not want to separate the two sets or separate them into two sets, let's face it, if they don't have names on the back of the picture, they're going to take a lot longer to figure out who's in them and where you want to put them and how you want to deal with them going forward. Because if you can't identify who's in those pictures, chances are the people who come after you are not going to be able to identify them any better than you can. So how about puzzles? How about making puzzles? Lots of people like to do puzzles. Other people hate them, but this is the kind of thing I do or I used to do anyway when my kids were little, for the upcoming like holidays. You know how the kids, they show up at the table and they eat 3 bites and they want to run away because they're done. They'd rather play with their cousins or whatever. I would try to get them to sit there for a little while and participate in conversations, give them something to do while they're at the table. So a simple word search puzzle, all you need to create a word search puzzle is some graph paper. That doesn't look like you can even see the lines. There we go. But just some simple graph paper. And it doesn't take much because you're just going to write in the words that you want them to find. And then you can fill it in with whatever crazy letters you want to. So not a lot of brain work involved here. Just pick a theme and make up a little puzzle. You could make a little bingo board and maybe you show people pictures. You could put names in here. I just put in relationships for the most part, but you could put in photos, you could put in names, however you wanted to work it. But people like to play games. Introduce them to their ancestors while you're playing a game. Again, it will depend on the age of people that you're, playing this with or trying to educate. Of course, one of the games that we probably all played when we were kids was that old memory game where you turn the cards over and you try to find 2 that match. Why not do that with pictures of your ancestors? And then have maybe you, depending again on the age of the people you're dealing with, you could have matching pictures. You could have 2 different pictures of the same person. Oh, here they are as a young person, here they are as an older person, however you want to mix and match them. But again, it gets you a chance to start a conversation with people about these ancestors and show them some of these great photographs that you've found along the way. And of course, if you've got, one more, coloring book. I read some instructions in a magazine one day about how to turn your own photographs into a coloring book. And I thought, well, that sounds like it's a pretty neat idea. I didn't have any little kids at the time, but I might get there again. So you need a photo editing program and you need a photograph that has lots of contrast with a very simple background. They say close-ups of faces or interesting buildings are probably the easiest to do. I found one picture that I thought met those criteria, and I took it into Photoshop Elements because I had found this in Family Tree magazine. I took it into Photoshop Elements and I changed it from being a photo into a sketch, which was their word for it, a sketch / photocopy. And then I just kind of made it as light or dark as I thought I wanted. Someday, if this child of mine ever becomes a dad, his kids might get this picture to color in as part of a coloring book. And you can see that why they're saying, pick something with a plain background and all of that, because even with this one, I mean, he's standing against a door and I got kind of crappy results over there, but there's enough that a little kid could start coloring it and see what came out of it. Might be an interesting experiment one of these days. Um, how about a jigsaw puzzle? This was another one I read about somebody doing in a magazine. They actually took the time to make a photo collage. They even created a key to it so that different people were identified, places and dates and things were identified. And then they did a search for vendors who make custom jigsaw puzzles. They ordered them and distributed them. Um, we've got time on our hands these days. So, I mean, sending somebody a jigsaw puzzle that's made up of ancestral photos or family photos might be a great way to make them feel like they're connecting with your own family, whether we get to be together for the holidays or not. And then, of course, there's just photo gifts. You know, all those things that the drugstores are going to advertise real soon as part of their holiday marketing, right? Bring in your photographs and make all of these different things. Any of these can be done. Anything that you digitize, a document, a photograph, whatever, can be used on these. So if you find that wonderful document, the ship's manifest of, the first immigrant ancestor that set foot in America, maybe you want to put that on a button or on a tote bag or something, whether it's for yourself or for a gift. I have done 3 different calendars. Try to find the front page of the first one I did here because I forgot to turn it. Let's see if I can put this up. I told Bob this was going to be the hardest part, was showing you the things I had here. So this is the first one that I had done. It's my father's parents, and I did 5 generations of their family, trying to get my father a little more interested in his heritage. And I figured, well, a little snippet, one little snippet every month, maybe he would figure something out and enjoy part of it. So here's something where I just kind of wrote, like, I know you're not going to be able to read that, but just something where I kind of wrote about his own father and just gave him a few facts, put in a few pictures and things. Um, and it came all the way down to, at the end, it has my children in it towards the November, December calendar pages, whatever. So anything like that can be done as a way to share some of those results. I've done that one. I have another one I did for my children where I just showed them various houses where their family had lived, because they were always like, well, why do you go there for this? And it's like, well, because we used to live there. Oh, yeah, keep forgetting that you lived there for like a year, Didn't have to live there long, but sometimes you just find that good thing that you always like to go back for. I even went so far on one of those, I even marked all the dates of the family for births, marriages, and deaths. I put little stickers on them all. It was a good thing I only had to make a couple copies of it. Um, so just different ways, again, for you to share with your family. Of course, one of the hardest decisions is going to be, do I share this publicly or privately? Publicly meaning, am I going to go put it on the internet? Um, Am I going to just simply hand it to somebody? Am I going to slide it to them? Am I going to make it a big presentation? It's totally up to you. A lot of people still don't want to share things on the cloud, leaving them on the internet or whatever. I don't blame you. Not a problem. It's an option that we have. It doesn't mean we have to use it. Of course, if you have something that's a one-of-a-kind item and you have multiple children, the more you can do with digitizing that so that you can have multiple copies, the better off we're all going to be, because we know what it's like to have to track down, which of the great grandchildren got grandma and great grandpa's, family Bible. They only had one. They could only give it to one of their 10 children. And that person had another 6 or 7 children. And how do we know which one of the 6 or 7 got it, or if it went to a cousin, whatever? The more we can multiply some of these things, the better off we're going to be. Whether or not you share it now or later, that's also your choice. some of this is great. Yes, you found great new information. Maybe you want to mimic one of the TV shows or something like that to show off some of your great research finds. Um, but there's other things you might want to just share more privately. Maybe you honestly don't want to even be the one that gives it to them. You'd rather just have them find it, and that's okay too. Um, I know that I want my information now, but then again, I have done many things where I've asked my mother or left my mother lists of questions and said, I don't care if I find the answers when I clean out your underwear drawer. I just want you to answer the questions. She won't, but at least I'm asking. And I can say that I've asked. Um, just make sure that anything you're leaving for somebody to find later is clearly marked. So some of the things as well, we don't necessarily all want to put everything on the internet, right? Even the genealogy sites, they all say, you know, if the person has no death date and they were born within the last 100 years, they mark everything private. They're trying hard not to share it with other people. It's not a guarantee. So I personally don't like to put anything into my online trees about living people. It goes into these notebooks that sit on my shelf behind me. So birth announcements that I get, wedding invitations, obituaries, anytime I get something that was publicized in the newspaper or whatever, it goes into these notebooks. I might have a couple of these people in my family trees. Some of them, sneak in there when you're working on Ancestry and you just are automatically clicking buttons and adding people in. Um, Most of them are not in the family tree, but I want to keep that information so that I have it available to whoever might need it later. Um, these are just full of page protectors marked with little tabs with people's names so that I can store the things that come across my life that mix up or match up with them. You might decide that you have an object that you really want to make sure you goes to a specific person later in time. Um, Write the story about it. Why do you want it to go to that person? Why is it so important to you? What makes it an important memento in your life? Um, I actually just did this, although I put them back on the wall, but I have two ceramic horse heads are up over above a doorway in our house. They were given to me by my grandmother. When I last took them off the wall because we were painting, I actually printed the stickers and put them on the back saying, these were given, and I put my name from my grandmother's name. My kids are going to get 50 cents instead of a quarter a piece for them in the tag sale. I know that. It's not anything they're going to be super interested in, but at least they have that little reminder when they take them off the wall that, oh, these were important to me. They were important to mom. Um, but you don't have to give them right away. You can package them, you can tag them, you can make a list, but send it with a story. Send it with something so they understand why it was important and why they should take care of it. So now let's look at things we can do that our grandparents couldn't have done. And that's all, of course, related to the technology that we have that they certainly didn't have in their laps, never mind in their pockets or pocketbooks. Um, we can make recordings. Yes, there's some issues with, okay, if you put it on a cassette tape, you have to find somebody who's got a cassette tape player and a VHS tape and all those kind of things. But we can make these kind of recordings that will have it so that our voice lasts and people will be able to hear our voice. They're going to be able to understand how we spoke, what our accents sounded like. We can make video recordings and they can see how our hands gestured while we talked. They can see what our hair looked like maybe on a day where we weren't, all prim and proper for taking pictures or whatever. Um, who would have thought when we were kids watching the Jetsons that we'd really be making video phone calls? But, we're all doing a lot more of it certainly this year than we ever did in the past. Um, so all these kind of things can be, for the most part, we can get them recorded, we can save them for sharing with our descendants. So let's look at a couple of these other examples here. Oh, I must have taken that one out. I was going to talk about the animated photos, and I may have taken the slide out only because the companies may have gone away. But there were some websites where you could go and click on put up a picture, click on like the jaw part or whatever, and they would make the look like the picture's talking, and you could say whatever words you wanted to put on it. One of the late night shows, they used to do that a lot as part of their comedy routines, whatever. And there are also several sites on the website where you can put up pictures and then tell your story orally. It will record you telling a story about that picture. And you can then give the link to your family members so they can go and hear stories about your childhood or whatever the pictures are about that you happen to post. This picture is from one of my birthday parties. My sister and I are born 2 weeks, 2 days apart. Well, 2 weeks, 2 days, 2 years apart. So we had huge birthday parties. We happened to be born in April, so it was usually nice weather. It was usually school vacation. We would have joint birthday parties. My mother would be baking cupcakes for weeks because we would invite 75 or 80 people to this party. Everybody who was in our school class, our church class, our swimming class, Girl Scout troop, you name it, they all got invited. And every year we would have either pony rides, or because we lived on a dead end street, we would also have the little train that they used to get for the church fair that would ride up and down, and we could all get rides up and down the street because there were no neighbors to bother. It didn't matter. So somebody might look at this picture and go, oh, there's a pony, in their front yard. If you happen to be able to see more of it, know that that was our front yard. But not realize that it's a birthday party and what the special occasion was, which is true of any photo. You look at it and it's a little piece of a time, but it doesn't necessarily tell us the bigger story about the why and wherefore of it. So we want to share what's important. We want to help other people learn from our experience. And hopefully we are not the type, as genealogists, as we're learning all of this stuff, we don't want to be the ones that are keeping the story and the wisdom to ourselves. Our grandparents maybe didn't have a lot of choice. Maybe they weren't literate enough to share a lot of this with us. We have options. If we're doing the genealogical research, then we're literate enough to write some notes. We're literate enough to organize some things, put some things together, and let people know what it is we've learned so that they can learn new things. So some of the other things, I don't know if I sent Robert the handout for this. We'll have to check with him. If I didn't, I will do that first thing in the morning, because I know the handout has some websites on it. And, some of the things you can do, I'm looking here through my sample to see if this one has the name of the company on it, because I can't remember it off the top of my head. But there's a company out there where you can actually print, trying to get front and back organized here. You could actually print for yourself a deck of cards. So here's the, back of the card. They all say family fun facts. And then on the front of the card, they allow you to put in a picture and some information about whoever's in the picture. So you can create your own deck of cards. And the deck I have here is a sample deck. So it has all kinds of crazy options in it, like 6 or 7 different options. But the family fun facts is probably the most genealogical relative kind of thing. Again, books can be you know, whatever makes sense for you to share. I have, I think it's my most recent, but maybe not. This is a smaller book. It's just 6 by 9. It's all the notes from my mother-in-law's kitchen calendars over the course of about 8 years. You know, that calendar where you write down every repairman that's coming, every little thing that's going on, which kid needs a ride to where. Um, she happened to also write on hers gifts that were given and received. Um, and I thought that was kind of neat that, you know, her grandchildren who are now in their 30s could find out, oh, grandma gave me such and such for my second birthday, or this is what I gave grandma when I was 4 years old, and all of that. Um, it was quick to write, it was easy to share, and people got a kick out of reading some of it, including myself, because she had marked down everybody's business trips. So it was like, oh, I don't remember my husband going there or there, but she had written them all down. Good thing, because I hadn't. Um, I think that's all I have in my, no, one other one to show you. Um, the other thing to do is, of course, if you're not quite up to writing things yourself, which I know can take a lot of thought, effort, energy, look for this type of a book, which is a fill in the blank. I gave these to my parents and my in-laws. I gave them 3 copies each since we had 3 children. Um, they are pretty popular to find around Christmas time. And they allow you to just do, my father was nice enough. Now he typed all his answers so he could make 3 copies and then just paste them in the books instead of putting them in his handwriting. So this is a page that documents his grandparents. So you could do this and you could fill it in from anybody's perspective. You could be the child, you could be the grandparent filling it in, whatever. But it would be another way to just kind of share some of that information. It's embarrassing because he does write some things in here about me that I really didn't want my kids to know. But such is life, you know. But he also wrote in things like, you know, his favorite meal was a hot dog off of the grill because he liked it with the black lines on it and all of that. So I try to feed those to him whenever I can now that I know it's one of his favorites. It's interesting way to get to know your parents or your grandparents when they were younger, you know, different people than who you are used to meeting or talking with. So I hope I gave you a couple of ideas here. I feel like this went fast because, again, of course, whoops, we're not having that interaction, which is so hard to get in this method. But I hope I gave you a few ideas, maybe a couple ideas for some Christmas presents if you've got time at home while you're being safe and staying healthy. Put together some stories, put together some photographs, whatever. Or I should say graphics, photographs, documents, whatever. Put them together to share with people and start a conversation. Even if it's just photo coasters, you know, there's so many things out there now that you can put photos in, and just remember that a photo doesn't have to be a photograph. It can really be a digitized copy of anything you find that brings back memories. So I opt for all kinds of questions now. Open your mics and tell me what's on your mind. What ideas do you have?
Great. And Seema, I would prefer people type their questions into the chat
Oh,
rather than talk. It's just easier to control that way. And I would note that I don't think you sent me the handout, so definitely resend tomorrow morning, and I'll make sure to pass it along.
I will do that.
Great. And also, Seema, for some of the items you held up, because we're in kind of like, you know, PowerPoint presentation view, it was a little difficult for folks to see. But what we can do before you leave is we'll have you stop sharing your screen, and then you can hold up a couple of the things like the deck of cards. And there was a couple of things that I think people were struggling to see.
Okay.
which
Yep.
we kind of anticipated. So we'll do that at the very end. But
Okay.
just to set folks' expectations, we'll take 10 to 15 minutes of questions for Seema. And then I'm going to discuss a digital resource that the library has that you might be interested in. And then we'll spend the last few minutes opening it up to the group if anyone wants to talk about where they're at with their genealogy journey. So we'll take 10 to 15 minutes of questions for Seema. I'll talk for about 5 minutes about a cool thing that we have going on here at the library that you might be interested in. And then if anyone wants to speak for a few minutes on what they're working on, we can do that then. All right, so Seema, first question is from Paul. Can you recommend any genealogical programs, either software or cloud-based, for storing and sharing family tree information?
Oh, there are so many, Paul. Um, I have used Family Tree Maker for 20, if not 30 years now. So that's usually my go-to, but I also use Roots Magic. Um, and I've also used Legacy, I think it's called Legacy Family Tree. Um, all of those are software based, so they would be on your computer as opposed to cloud based. um, Ancestry, Family Search, Find My Past, they all allow you to put a tree up online. However, I'm always careful to just explain, if you start a tree at FamilySearch.org, great place to do work because 100% free. But their goal is to create one family tree for the entire world. So as soon as you put somebody into your tree who connects with another person's family tree, everything gets connected. And my big thing with that is you cannot then take your information out and keep it separate on your own computer because you've now linked in. It can be great because you can get 10 or 12 generations of information by adding one person, your great grandparent or something. But I just like to let people know that it does mean that, you become linked to everything else, and it's a lot harder to get that back out and have your own information.
Great.
But
Yep.
do a search, on Google. If you search for genealogy software, you'll find at least 20 of them that will offer you free downloads. So you can try them out. And no matter what program you're using on the computer or on the internet, they all use the same file system. So you can always export from one and import to the other. So don't get paranoid that if you put in, 100 people and then you decide you really don't like it, don't stick with it if you don't like it, because all you have to do is export it and you can import it to another program without having to retype those 100 people.
Great. Donna would like to know, let's see. So what are good sites to start to find information on family members?
So
Ancestry.com?
I see she put Ancestry.com in. Now, if you can use Ancestry.com, and use it for free, I say go for it. I think you said you had it at the library, right, Robert?
That's correct. We do.
Yeah. So you just have to keep in mind that the Ancestry you use at the library is not the same as the one that you pay for. But genealogy does cost money, so I'm all for using whatever you can for free. The difference between the two is that if you're using it through the library, you do not get to store your own tree. You can do all the research. You can get most of their documents, because anything that's a federal document, they can't restrict your access. There are going to be some documents you won't be able to get. But so Ancestry is good. And then FamilySearch.org is also wonderful, again, because it's free. They will have you set up an account with a password, but they don't ask for any money. I'm sure they'd like to send you an email somewhere or something, but I've gotten very few emails from them. And there are, there are so many places to look depending on exactly what you're looking for. Um, findmypast.com is great if you're doing English research. Um, Actually, Great Britain research, they have a lot of things for all of Great Britain. Um, and then, of course, MyHeritage. If you're doing European, if you are um, certainly first or second generation American, you might want to try MyHeritage. That's also a subscription site. Um, but it's a European based site, so they tend to have a lot more European users and a lot more European documents.
Brianna says, thank you. So many great ideas to bring to the family reunion. We have a big 150th anniversary of the family farm coming up. So we are doing a big gathering. So we need lots of ideas to keep many generations interested. Brianna, you came to the right talk tonight. So Seema, jumping back, so during your presentation, Sharon and others were telling me that they were having a difficult time seeing some of the things. We had kind of anticipated that.
Yep.
Do you want to, and I don't want to be repetitive, so you don't have to dive deep into each item, but do you want, now that you have a larger screen, do you want to show some of those things again?
Okay, yeah. So just because they were on the top of my desk here, I have to see my camera. These are the playing cards that one of the companies will make. So if you have, actually there's a couple companies now that will do it, that you can put in, you can actually make, these are just more fun things to kind of have around the house. There's another company that will make a legitimate deck of cards, and you can do it with either 13 pictures, 26 pictures, or 52 pictures, depending what you want on the cards. I did them actually last year for my son who had just gotten engaged, and he took 600 pictures of his engagement. Like, I made him a deck of cards because what else do you do with that many pictures? What else did I hold up? Oh, okay, this is, move it over there. This is a calendar that I did, a photo calendar. The drugstores advertise them for Christmas time all the time. Bring in 12 pictures. Well, you can do more than 12 if you want, but I did this one for 4 or 5 generations of my father's family. And, you can get, I actually printed this one right at home on my own printer, but 3 or 4 pictures and a few little tidbits on the page. This is spiral bound. So once I had it, I just took the spiral out, ran it through my printer, and put the spiral back in it. I know, sounds easy, doesn't it? This is a, let's see. This is a fill in the blank book that I had given my father to fill in. So things that he remembers, and it talks about everything from his grandparents right down to at the end, what was it like to become a grandpa? So if you're not really ready to sit down and be creative about writing up some of these things, this is, let's see if I can get this close enough, but real fill in the blank. What was your occupation? What did you do? There's pages about, how did you meet grandma? Where did you go on your first date? All kinds of things I didn't even know until he filled these in for my kids, because I never thought to ask my father all those kind of things about dating my mom. Well, I knew one story about dating my mother, because we always teased him that he should have paid more attention. He was on his way to his first date with my mother and got hit by a train. Like, that wasn't a hint, Dad? Like, really?
Seema, I don't see any additional. Oh, did you have something? Yeah, you had a couple of others, right?
Yeah, I know I held this one up. This
Yep.
was just a small book I did. Just, books don't have to be big. This is the one that's based on my mother-in-law's kitchen calendars. So it has little things in it like, oh, this is the day they first got cable TV installed. People take things for granted these days. We have to teach them that we didn't always have those, whatever. It had things about business trips and gift giving, was the big thing that I used to start that one with was, she had tracked down or tracked the gifts she gave as well as the gifts she received, which was kind of cool to look at and see what people were giving for gifts back in the early 80s. I think that was the only stuff I held up.
Great. So hopefully everyone got a good enough view. So Seema, I don't have any other questions in the chat. So do you have any last words, anything else you want to sort of impart onto the group before you leave?
Good luck. Brianna, good luck with your reunion. If you need other ideas, feel free to write me. I'm sure I can come up with a few others, age appropriate for all kinds of groups. We're doing them electronically these days as well. There's game show things, if you're into game shows, there's all kinds of templates out there for how to create Jeopardy and other game shows within PowerPoint and stuff like that. So there's lots of ways to get people involved. And if you're not comfortable with the technology, that's the #1 way to get somebody else involved. Ask a younger kid, tell them, this is what I want to do. Will you help me? And let them do the technology part while you provide all the information.
Excellent. Well, let's give Seema a big virtual round of applause for joining us here tonight. And Seema, you can either stick around for another 10 minutes or log off. It's completely up to you.
Stick around.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to now...
Too many times.
That's okay. Let me take the spotlight from you. Oh, I'm going to break the camera. Okay. Want to thank everyone for coming. Seema did a wonderful job. Hoping folks can stick around. I'm going to talk for a few minutes, and then I'm going to do something very dangerous, and I'm going to open it up to the members here to see if anyone has anything they want to talk about in terms of where they are with their research. But something I wanted to plug that you may not be aware of, and this is something that I think the townies will especially appreciate, although this is probably applicable to any out-of-towners as well. Here in Tewksbury, we've recently, within the last 5 years, digitized our yearbooks. So all the high school yearbooks going back to 1940, we now have digitized. We partnered with a company called Advantage Preservation. And you can access the yearbooks on our website if you go to tewksburypl.org and click on the research tab on the homepage. You'll get a drop-down menu, and if you click on genealogy, it's actually local history and genealogy. If you click on that tab, you'll see a long list of digital and print resources that we have. So we have all the yearbooks, both in print and digitized. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is on the same page as the digitized yearbooks, we also have digitized our microfilm of our local newspapers. So we have the Tewksbury Advocate, which was the Tewksbury Advertiser, which was originally the Merrimack Valley Advertiser, digitized all the way back to 1957. And then our partner library next door in Wilmington, they have the town crier digitized going back, I believe, to the 60s or 50s. So Tewksbury has the Advocate, Wilmington has the town crier. Those are sort of the two big papers around. And I believe the Pollard Library in Lowell either has the Lowell Sun digitized, or they have some sort of special database where you can look up the articles. So amongst the three towns, we have the Lowell Sun, the Tewksbury Town Crier, and the Tewksbury Advocate covered. But this may also be, I know we have some out-of-towners, and I would definitely check in with your libraries. There were both state and federal grants to digitize local newspapers a couple of years ago. Same thing with yearbooks a few years ago. And so check with your local libraries to see if your high school yearbooks have been digitized and your local newspapers have been digitized. And when I say digitized, they're also searchable. They're PDFs and they're searchable by keyword. So you can search for, family, friends, folks you grew up with, etc. So that's what I wanted to plug tonight. And we have a whole host of maybe 20 to 30 resources listed on our local history and genealogy page on our website. So I would invite you to definitely check those out. And over the course of the next, couple of years of meetings, I'll have plenty of time to talk about those various resources. All right, so now I wanted to open the floor. Now let me stop recording. So goodbye to anyone who was watching us after the fact.